and MCM, which is MCM is Mopani Copper Mines, and KCM Konkola Copper Mines, which were successor companies to ZCCM, provided tax concessions to these companies. The objective was to support and facilitate the substantial recapitalization and investments that the mining company required. The concessions which were given at that time were as follows. Number one, mineral royalty tax was reduced from 2% to 0.6% of gross value. Corporate tax was reduced from 35% to 25%, of course, of taxable income. And the period for loss carry forward was increased to 20 years. 3, withholding tax on interest, dividends, royalties, and management fees paid to shareholders and affiliates was reduced from 15% to 0%. Number 4, it was also indicated that the mines be deemed as 1975 new mines. That's a technical term. They were deemed to be 1975 new mines in order to allow for the deduction of 100% of capital expenditure in the year the expenditure is incurred. Those were concessions given in 2000 by the Zambian government to those ex-ZCCM mining companies, and 2 of them specifically. This tax regime continued to be applicable, but in 2002, the government realized that there was discrimination in the taxation of mining companies. By 2006, which was last year, the country started to engage in the exploitation of other metals apart from copper and cobalt. These concessions were only for copper and cobalt. But as you remember, then others started saying, we found gold, we found nickel, we found uranium. So other metals were being discovered in the country. As a result, in last year's budget, 2006, the government decided that all the tax incentives that apply to the mining of copper and cobalt under the Income Tax Act and the Mines and the Minerals Act be extended to all the base metals. So we are now going to capture those who are going into mining of uranium and so on, all the other metals. During the same year last year, however, it became apparent that the metal prices on the international market were reaching unprecedented levels, and that the taxation system under the development agreements could not offer the government meaningful revenue contributions. And it was last year that the copper price, for example, reached $8,000 per ton, unheard of in the history of copper mining in Zambia, or perhaps in the world. A need, therefore, arose to relook at the regime with a view of allowing the government to get substantial and meaningful revenues from the mining sector. At this point, it was clear that the conditions which had necessitated the concessions of 2000, which were extended in 2002 to the other mining companies, no longer existed. The argument being that at that time, when copper prices on the international market were low, mining companies were offered these incentives in order to make their projects viable. And at that time, I think the price was around $2,000, perhaps around $2,000 per ton. Now it was $8,000. So it was felt that the incentive for having these people to come was no more our concessions. It was now the good price. That at that moment, therefore, now that the prices were so high, there was need to review these concessions so that the nation could benefit from increased earnings from the mining companies. Just as a way of giving you some statistics to illustrate the inequalities caused by the concessions under the development agreements, with the levels of production in 2000 and 2006 and using the London Metro Exchange prices, earnings from the mining sector amounted to $1.6 billion in 2005 and $3.1 billion in 2006. You can see just that jump itself because of the copper prices from 1.6 to 3.1 billion. Of these amounts, taxes paid to the Zambian government only amounted in 2005 to $26 million. From 1.6 billion of production, we only got $26 million. In 2007, we received taxes of $76 million. In 2007, the mining companies are projected to earn an amount of $3.5 billion, while their tax contribution is estimated to be $198 million only. This translates to about 1.9% of the total taxes in 2005, 4.8% in 2006, and the projection for this year is that the taxes will only be 10%, the mining taxes compared to the total taxes in the country. Clearly, this contribution is not consistent with the revenues being made by the mining companies. There is clear inequality in the sharing of the revenues from the country's major resource. This clearly demonstrates the lopsidedness of the development agreements which had been signed under such circumstances. It is obviously difficult for the government to continue signing more development agreements on the same terms. It is also not in line with the stated purposes of the development agreements themselves, in which, in the development agreements, it's stated, A, to secure the maximum benefit for and adequately contribute to the advancement and the social and the economic welfare of the people of Zambia. That is in the development agreement. B, secure an appropriate return on investment for the mining companies. Those are the two major purposes of the development agreements. It's therefore important that mining companies should contribute more to the government revenues in order to fulfill the stated purposes in the development agreements, which basically are, I quote again, to secure the maximum benefits for and adequately contribute to the advancement and the social and the economic welfare of the people of Zambia. End of the quote from a development agreement. I have told you that we feel it's time to renegotiate, and we said that. Where are we now and who is doing what? In order to address the imbalance I have outlined in 2007, the government revised the mining tax regime. If you recall, in this year's budget, we said we want to do better. We are going to revise the tax regime. A, we increased the company income tax for the mining sector from 25% to 30%. B, increase mineral royalty from 0.6% to 3% of gross value for base metals, and from 2% to 3% for precious metals. And C, reintroduce withholding tax, which had been at 0, back to 15%. So we are saying we think we should improve on all these things, and we put everything back. If anything, mineral royalty, which had been at 2%, we even added another one to make it 3%. The government then appointed a team to renegotiate the development agreements because of the stability clauses in the development agreements. The stability clauses in the development agreements said all the concessions given in 2000 will apply for a period of time. They will not be changed. Now, for example, KCM, it said they will not be changed for the next 20 years. That was a stability period. To them, they wanted to secure themselves that we are stable. Government will never shake our revenues. So they will continue to charge us only 0.6%. So this is what is in the development agreement. The team that I constituted, after, of course, a lot of consultations, everybody, cabinet involved. The chairperson of the team is Mr. Evans Chibiliti, the secretary to the Treasury, and his deputy is Mr. Leonard Nkata, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Mines and Minerals Development. That's the chairman and the deputy chairman. The mandate of the team was to renegotiate the development agreements only. We said we want to renegotiate the development agreements because these stability periods didn't seem to fit in with what I said they contained, the benefits to the Zambians. If copper prices were going up, it says, don't destabilize us by changing your tax regime. So we felt we had to negotiate the development agreements. The team has undertaken extensive work, including consultative visits to major mining companies like Chile. Those who might recall, at one point, Chile was #1 in copper production, Zambia was #2, until for a long time, Zambia became #3. So this is another country which has a lot of copper. Chile produces now 5 million tons. When we were producing 750,000 tons, they were producing 1 million. From there, Zambia to produce 250,000 tons, and Chile went to produce 5 million tons. So these prices also apply to Chile. So this team went to Chile to say, how have you reacted to what has happened? Some of the findings of the team, where they have gone, and the local consultations show that the Zambian fiscal regime, compared to other mining companies, has the lowest effective tax rate in the mining sector. For example, Zambia's effective tax rate under the development agreement regime stands at 31.8%. In other words, when you take all the taxes that we put on the mining companies, add them up, they only come to 31.8% of the income. In the region, the next comparable regime is the Zimbabwean regime at 40.3%, and already that's a difference of 9.5%. We are the lowest. The next ranked is South Africa at 43.4%, Tanzania is at 45.5%, Namibia is at 48.3%, Botswana at 50.9%, Mozambique is at 52.5%, while Angola in the mining sector is the highest with a 53% effective tax rate. Even on the international level, Zambia still has the lowest effective tax rate, followed by Peru at 39.7%. This makes Zambia 8 percentage points lower than the next lowest country on the international level. In this regard, after this work, which was preliminary, as I told you, we were only supposed to renegotiate the development agreements. After findings, as I have indicated to you, we extended the mandate of the team so that they could also come up with an optimal fiscal and regulatory regime for the sector in the future. This is particularly important because once an optimal fiscal and regulatory regime is in place, it will ensure that the people of Zambia get a fair and equitable share of their resources, while at the same time, the mining companies will also get an appropriate return on their investment. This is what we call a win-win position, and it is what is desirable at the moment and the future for our country. Let me also clarify that the renegotiating team is entirely composed of government officials. There has been a lot of talk about why involve foreigners. We have a team made up of Zambians, and against other countries where in the teams they have politicians, in Zambia we have no politician on this team. It is made of Zambian government officials, whom we call technocrats in government. The people in the judiciary are not technocrats when it comes to taxes. The people at parliament are not technocrats. The technocrats are found in the government ministries, and that is why we constituted a team of them. However, because of the complexity of the situation, the team engaged international consulting firms from Norway and the United States of America purely to assist them with an international perspective and the best practices on the matter. After saying what is the way forward? The government objective is obviously to have a strong and robust mining sector with a fiscal and regulatory regime that is efficient and attractive to the investors, effective, equitable, sustainable, and can therefore stand the test of time. If we have an equitable system, it means everybody, when things go bad, copper prices again go down, and we don't get enough revenue, everybody will understand. Because when the times are good, they will have shared in the good times. That is what equitability means. We are looking to such a fiscal and regulatory regime. With this type of regime, I do not see any need for development agreements in the future, because all the intents and purposes for which the investors want the development agreements shall be provided in the fiscal and the regulatory framework. Once we set up what we are doing now, I don't expect any one investor to come and say, Mr. Minister of Finance and National Planning, can we sign a development agreement? I will refer him to the law. The law as it will be passed by Parliament, as it will exist then, will cover anybody. And I will tell them, if you are going into mining, go to the Mining and Minerals Act. It provides everything you want to know about your investment in mining. If you want to know about taxes, go to the Income Tax Act. It will provide you what taxes mining is going to be. Let me emphasize that with such a regime, there will be no incentive for this administration, and indeed, hopefully, for any future administration to make changes to taxation regimes, as it will provide comfort and minimize the risk for both the investor and the government. I would prefer that even ministers who will come in the future, they don't start going to the seminar for journalists and say, what did he do? It will be all in the law. And the law will not have my name or my face there. It will be a law for the country. This principle, I must emphasize, should be the case for all other sectors of the economy. We would not like to go into special agreements. Our laws, fiscal and regulatory, must provide for all the other sectors, all those who want to go into investments. At this moment, I have basically given you a lot of thought, a lot of food on the mining development agreements. But let me mention one thing that might also be of interest to you, that in February this year, the government of the Republic of Zambia announced its intention to transfer 100% of GRZ shareholding in Mamba Collieries to ZCCM Investment Holdings, PLC. The share transfer agreement and the agreement in support have now been executed by the Minister of Finance and National Planning, ZCCM Investment Holdings, and Mamba Collieries Limited. It was hoped that this transfer would provide Mamba Collieries with an opportunity to revamp its operations and be transformed into a viable business entity in the economy. After the signing of the share transfer agreement, a scheme of arrangement for creditors shall be put in place and implemented, and therefore the payments due to the creditors arising from the scheme shall only be effected after the scheme has been approved by the High Court, and hopefully the manager is here. It could be on the 17th of December, which is next week. GRZ and ZCCMIH are confident that the steps we have taken as government to transfer our shares to ZCCMIH will breathe a new life in Mamba Collieries. They will address various issues, including environmental issues faced by the company, and in particular, we are very keen that Mamba starts operating and deliver the coal which is required by industry. If you go on the copper belt, some of the mines are importing their coal from overseas. Just in Kafue, we have a steel plant which is coming up, and that steel plant in 4 years' time will require 60,000 tons of coal per month. And now, it's scouting overseas to try to get that coal. We hope this coal is going to come to Mamba. So we hope that by the scheme of arrangement, the people in Mamba who have been crying for instability will now see stability in their employment. Mr. Chikwa can confirm that only a month ago or so, he went there to pay some 2 billion kwacha of arrears of salary. Nobody at Mamba is owed any arrears of salary. So if you went to Mamba now, you'll find smiling faces, because now we have put the company back. And this is what we want. Even on the mines, on the copper belt, in Northwestern, we want the miners to be happy. But that can only come by government knowing their problems and try to deal with these problems as they come along. Otherwise, that is the message on the mining issues. This has been brought to your light by a very important personality and a citizen, the head of state for the Republic of Zambia, former President FTJ Chiruba. Only yesterday you were before him. What did he tell you? One, he told you that the ministry responsible for maintaining government accounts has issued instructions to all government departments to transfer their money and accounts from wherever the money is to Finance Bank. That was said not only yesterday, I think it was said 2 weeks ago. We didn't want to reply, but yesterday we were. Why is the government quiet? Not even President Mwanawaso or his cabinet ministers can say this. Let me say, the current arrangements for financial management in government is not by ministers. If it was during President Chiruba's reign, it changed. I don't know where any ministry is keeping the money that I tax you. Under the Public Finance Act, I am a company incorporated under Chapter 349 of the Republic Constitution. My responsibility under the Public Finance Act is to appoint a chief controlling officer. I only appoint one person, and that person is the secretary to the Treasury. After his appointment, he chooses within government who is going to help him to control your money. And in each ministry, or in each department, or in each province, or in each institution, he appoints what we call a controlling officer. And the controlling officers, with their chief controlling officers, on a day-to-day basis, know where your money is. I don't know. And if I don't know, I can imagine how Honorable Namulambe would know. He's too busy organizing for Esther's fight. That's his job. not to know which account is keeping the money for the Ministry of Cooperatives. No. This is a departure, perhaps from when President Chiluba was president. And because of that, ministers have no responsibility for accounting for government monies. They don't go to Parliament. This time, I also don't go to Parliament, to the Public Accounts Committee, to answer questions on how money for the Ministry of Finance or for the whole nation has been used, because I'm not supposed to know. So when you hear me shouting, like when you saw me shouting at those road constructors there, if they were to turn around and say, Mr. Minister, when did you send our 2 billion kwacha? I was going to look stupid because I don't know. I was asking that contractor, how much have you been paid? If he turned around and just said, how much did you pay me? I was going to keep quiet. I don't know. He knows. And the controlling officers. Now, at the beginning of each year, there is a tender process whereby this the accountant general and the chief controlling officers put out a tender notice to banks who want to provide banking services to the Republic of Zambia. You watch out in your own newspapers, you see an advertisement. Banks that wish to provide banking facilities to the Republic of Zambia, can you please indicate by applying and answering the following questions? What are you able to provide in these following areas? And that tender process goes through like any other tender process. It's evaluated and adjudicated. And then once that is done, a bank is told, by the way, the adjudication is done together with the Bank of Zambia people who know what these banks are, because they are the regulators and the supervisors. So they will tell the accountant general here and his team, this bank, although the last, they put a good proposal, the last 2 quarters, their liquidity ratios were not according to the Financial and Banking Services Act. We think if they got your money, they might be using their money to balance their other problems. Once that is done, the winners are announced at a public meeting at the Bank of Zambia. And they are told, Bank so and so and so, you have won a tender to provide services to the Republic of Zambia. And then the ministries are informed. The following banks won tenders to provide banking services to the government. Can you, as controlling officer, decide who you want to bank with? So the controlling officer for the Ministry of Defense decides amongst the banks that won the tender, I want to bank with this bank because Kaoma Barracks, the nearest bank which is in Kaoma, is this bank. If I don't bank with this bank, it means my soldiers at Kaoma Barracks will take two weeks to come to Lusaga for paying their salaries. Let me choose a bank which has a branch nearby to our operations. And all the ministries decide that decision is made by them. Each one chooses who they think will be the appropriate to bank with them. And then what happens after that? They write to the chief controlling officer. We as Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives have chosen the following banks with the following branches, and the following shall be the signatories. In Kasama, because we don't want the people in Lusaka to be signatories for macro accounts in Kasama, we are appointing the provincial agricultural coordinator. His name is Mr. Magande. His signature is as follows. His national registration card is as follows. And that information comes here to the chief controlling officer. He satisfies himself with the recruitment agents that Mr. Magande is a civil servant. And Mr. Magande's national registration card is as it appears on his payslip. So he's truly employed and he's in Kasama. And then word goes to Ministry of Agriculture. Yes, go ahead and deal with this bank in Kasama with the following approved signatories. Once that is done, how the money goes into that account, it's the transfers from the Ministry of Finance. When a check is written, that account, the chief controlling officer, the accountant general, the Minister of Finance do not know. There is a panel of signatories in Kasama writing checks to pay the extension officers their subsistence allowance. Once that finishes, what follows next is the Auditor General to go and audit those accounts to make sure the money which was released here and went into that account was properly withdrawn by properly constituted signatories. And that is what you see in the Auditor General account. This account, money was withdrawn, but the voucher did not indicate who the signatories were. It is not the Ministry of Finance. Now, with that process, what would take the Chief Controlling Officer to write a to all government departments and say, now all of you, you close your accounts with Zanaco and take the money to Finance Bank? How? How would that work? So it is not correct. Let me now tell President Chiruba, I am denying his statement. It's not true that instructions have been given to withdraw accounts from Zanaco to Finance Bank. However, what President Chiruba might have heard and misheard is that we have, through our Accountant General, decided to withdraw large balances of government monies lying around in these accounts controlled by the controlling officers if the money is not used within a period that we feel is comfortable. We have decided those large amounts of money will be withdrawn and deposited in a special holding account at the Bank of Zambia. Our operating and revenue account is account 99. We have opened a holding account. This means the Ministry of Health, where we have released a lot of money for purchasing drugs. Right now we are told they have enough drugs to go up to March. They have not started the tendering process to acquire the next batch of drugs. They have over 20 billion kwacha for drugs. That money is in the account of the Ministry of Health, in a bank account they themselves decided beginning of the year, which is called a drug account. Ask me, ask Mr. Jibiriti, we don't know where it is. That 20 billion, which is not required by the Ministry of Health, in the next 2-3 months, if they go for tendering in March, most likely the payments will only be made in May or June. That money, which is likely to be in this account until June, we have said to the Ministry of Health, please, you don't leave this money in this account. We are moving it back to the central bank and put it in a holding account. When you are ready to make payments to the drug suppliers, to the pharmaceuticals companies, we will write a check the same day because this money will still be in that account. Now, that is why I say, perhaps that's what Dr. Chiruba didn't hear properly. Why are we doing it? Because between the time this money was released, which could be August, to next July, if it's in the bank, in a commercial bank, the commercial bank is using government money to lend to you and making money out of public funds. When the government also, on a monthly basis, we don't balance our revenue, we go to the market to sell treasury bills or bonds. And the people that seem to rush to buy our bonds are commercial banks. So what would happen is, when government wants money and we go to the market to sell treasury bills, The people who are liquid are commercial banks with government money, which is lying idle in an account. So they rush to the Bank of Zambia to lend the government its own money. And we have said, no, we can't be borrowing our own money. So we are improving treasury management. That is what we have done. We have not, third time, perhaps because the clause 3 times, we have not issued instructions to close accounts with Zanaco and get all the money to finance bank. The return I have here indicates, for your information, something like this. These are the accounts with Zanaco at the moment. And we get them by computer on a daily basis. All these accounts are with Zanaco. Look at how they run. Thousands. And they are there. The accountant general can go now. If you say, perhaps this happened before Dr. Chiruba made his announcement, you go there with the accountant general. You go on his PC, and he will be able to download this. These are the accounts at Zanaco. The other accounts are with all the other banks. Here is the Finance Bank. Here is the Citibank. Where are the others? So if you see between Zanaco and the Finance Bank, even just by appearance, which is bigger? Huh? How can these numbers be this one larger than this one? So it is not correct, and I want to assure you that this government does not intend to operate as perhaps President Juruba's government used to operate their finances. We want to make a difference. Standard Bank. Here you are. Barclays Bank. Here you are. Indo-Zambia Bank. Here you are. First Alliance Bank. Here you are. How many of you know where First Alliance Bank is? How many? 4 out of this group. I don't know where they are. But somebody in the government decided they were going to bank with them, because that bank might be closer to their head office. Invest Trust Bank, here you are. Stanbic Bank, here you are. Who is left? Huh? Who is left? Which bank have I left? Huh? Which one? Indo-Zambia Bank. But I read this one. I read it. Huh? Government. Do you have anybody from government? No. The computer tells us at the Bank of Zambia, government is not being used. And the use of these banks is just really for convenience. Now, you all know that 3 years ago, or was it 3 years ago, yes? Barclays Bank closed most of their rural branches. When they closed the branches, they actually sold the buildings to Finance Bank. And the Finance Bank suddenly expanded by 11, 12 branches. So, if someone says, in the last 3 years, Finance Bank has taken more of government business, he should have also continued to say, in the last 4 years, Barclays Bank also lost business. But it was Barclays who closed voluntarily. And the government had nothing to do even between the agreement between Barclays Bank and Finance Bank. I called the managing director of Barclays here to ask her, you know there was then Ms. Margaret Manakar. I called her, ring her in Ghana. She will tell you I called her here. Why are you closing your branches? Don't you have faith in Mwanawasa and Magande? In the banking sector and the Fundange Bank of Zambia? She says, that's not my decision. It's at head office. And the head office is not in Zambia. They decided to go. What has happened this year? Hasn't Barclays Bank come back? I called the regional manager for Africa. I said, come here. Why are you opening now when you closed only 3 years ago? He says, it was the head office. Now, Barclays Bank is all over the place, even by the corner of a street. In 2 years, are you going to be surprised that most of the accounts are going to be with the Barclays Bank if they are every corner? So, these issues, as they deal with the financial management of government, I want to plead that the heads of states do not get involved to want to know such details. The laws provide who should be involved. It is not for a head of state. President Mwanawasa does not have this information. I didn't have this information until 20 minutes ago before coming here. I don't keep this information. Immediately we finish, I'll pass it over to the accountant general. Why? Because I don't even want to know that this bank is dealing with the government. If I went there to borrow money for my farming, I don't want to know it's because they are banking with the government. It is me as a farmer, not me as Minister of Finance. So that is an explanation on that one. What is the next one? The head of state says, I have been told this government has issued instructions to the big parastatals to withdraw their insurance services from Zambia State Insurance Corporation. And I think Inden, Tazama, and Zesco are mentioned. I was on the phone this morning with the MD for Zesco. He's in Ndola trying to sort out a serious problem. And he says, no, we have no instructions. In 2004, we decided to tender our insurance business. We put a public tender for all insurance companies to indicate whether they were going to give us insurance. When the tender committee said, they decided Zambia State Insurance Corporation was no more competitive. Their rates were higher than the others. So we decided to leave them in 2004. Now, I asked the MD for ZISC, when did ZESCO leave you? She said 2004. Suddenly, in 2007, at the end of the year, when we are going towards Christmas, which is a time for celebrations, it has become an issue. Why? Why does that become an issue? Are we going to start now getting ourselves quarreling because it's Christmas time? Yes, we remember somebody was tortured on Christmas Day. But please, this is a Christian nation. It was declared a Christian nation. December is for Christmas. And the Christians must be coming together, not to raise issues of 2004. So when did ZESCO, and who instructed ZESCO? You know that ZESCO has just had a constituted board recently. I have not talked to the chairman of ZESCO, even to congratulate him. I have tried, but I can't get him on the cell phone. So who issued the instruction? ZESCO is under the Ministry of Energy and Water Development. Right now, the minister is out of the country. Right now, the minister is too busy making sure that even for 1 minute, you don't have a shortfall of fuel. And he has managed that. Instead of giving him credit, you want to start attacking him about issuing instructions to ZESCO to stop insuring with ZISC. Now, in the same press conference, the President Juruba said, I did a lot because I brought liberalization. Isn't it anomalous that in a liberalized environment, we can sink low and start commanding our parastatals to do business? Right now, even government vehicles are serviced at any garage, anywhere, because this is what liberalization means. We want to share government business with the private sector. So, again, it is not true. It is not true. It is not true. And this is a minister talking. And since he included the president or the minister, I'm taking the prerogative that I can also answer a former head of state. If he only said, I want the head of state to answer, I would have kept quiet. But since he included ministers, some of us who are in this government do not want to relish on untruth. And these two issues concern finances. That's why I have decided to deal with them. It is not correct to accuse us in government now of doing things that anybody can see would be wrong. The president also decided to be an auditor general. He said the auditor general's report says 88 billion was misappropriated. The only thing I would like to tell you is that the auditor general is answerable to the head of state. Next time President Chiluba has a press conference, let him help you. How many auditor general's reports were produced during his reign? And let him read any one of them when there was no money misappropriated. After that, if money was misappropriated in his term of 10 years, let him add up how much money was misappropriated. We want to know. The report which is presented, which we at this ministry are proud of, from a hard-working auditor general whom we are supporting fully, an auditor general who is fully supported by the head of state, was from 2002 to 2007. Let President Chiluba bring a report which will have the summation of the 5 years before. That means 1996 to 2001, we want to know how much money was misappropriated. I know there was an auditor general that time, and he is a personal friend. And I would want to know where his reports are and when they were approved. That is all I can say on that. But we are proud that you are knowing now these things. The Zambians are knowing these things because we are not washing dirty linen in the public. We are washing our linen in the public. But we don't think it's that dirty. Thank you very much.